Under the scorching sun of the desert town of Mesaluna, life moves as slowly and barren as the endless sand dunes. In an old roadside cafe, where time seems to have forgotten, a black man sits quietly at a table in a hidden corner. His dark tan, his cold eyes behind sunglasses, and most of all, his old wheelchair speak louder than any words. They call him Jamal. To those who don't know him, Jamal is just a disabled veteran, a shadow of his past, easily despised, easily threatened. And then, as is often the case in harsh places like Mesaluna, a few local thugs decide to take out their anger and boredom on the wrong person. They walk up, laugh, and slap the wheelchair as if it were a joke. Little do they know, the wheelchair is more than just a means of transportation. He was part of a secret federal agent, a highly trained bloody war veteran whose current mission was to infiltrate one of the most dangerous gangs in the Southwest, the Scorched Ravens. And when the Bullies made their move, Jamal made his move. No warning. No hesitation. Just the cold precision of a man used to living on the edge of life and death. No one will ever forget that afternoon. It was the day the entire town of Mesaluna learned a simple but valuable lesson: never underestimate a man, just because he's in a wheelchair. Under the blistering heat of the desert, the wheels of a battered wheelchair rolled steadily across the cracked pavement of an abandoned industrial yard. A black former soldier adjusted his sunglasses, his sharp eyes scanning the rusted warehouse ahead. Suddenly the roar of motorcycles shattered the silence. 5 bikers clad in leather and menace descended like vultures, their leader sneering as he circled Soldier, but as Solar's voice cut through the tension and his concealed weapon clicked into place, the bikers realized they had made a grave mistake. The midday sun beat down on Mesaluna, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks and the aging facade of buildings in this forgotten desert town. The faint hum of cadis filled the dry air as Jamal J. Carter, a black former soldier, wheeled himself along the quiet industrial street. His movements were deliberate, his posture steady, as if the desert heat didn't touch him. Clad in a weathered flannel shirt and jeans, he looked like any other local going about their day, but Jay's calm. Demianor hit a sharp mind trained for combat, always scanning for threats. 3 years had passed since the explosion in Somalia that had taken his legs and ended his military career, but the loss hadn't stopped him. It had only pushed him to adapt. Now undercover as a security guard at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Mesaluna, Jay was on the trail of one of the Southwest's deadliest weapons trafficking rings, the Scorched Ravens. The warehouse loomed ahead, its rusting exterior blending into the desolate surroundings. To most it was just another relic of a bygone industrial era, but to Jay it was a hub of criminal activity. His wheelchair rolled to a stop just outside the main gate. He adjusted the sunglasses perched on his nose, glanced over his shoulder, and tapped his phone. A faint ping confirmed the GPS tracker he planted last night on a Scorched Raven's vehicle was still active inside the warehouse. The Raven were busy. Jay could hear the distant echo of heavy crates being moved and the unmistakable grumble of Ezekiel Vulture Greaves' voice barking orders. Jay knew better than to rush in. His mission was to observe, gather intel, and stay undetected until the FBI task force could strike. He maneuvered toward the rear of the building, where a narrow access ramp led to a small service door. His wheelchair's reinforced frame made the uneven terrain manageable, and the modified motor allowed to move almost silently. Reaching the door, he tapped into the hidden camera he'd installed a week ago. The live feed showed several gang members unloading crates marked with military insignias. Jay's jaw tightened. If the Scorched Ravens had military-grade weapons, they weren't just a local problem, they were a national threat. Suddenly the sound of boots crunching on gravel snapped him out of his focus. Jay quickly turned off the camera feed and rolled into the shadows behind a stack of old pallets. "You see anyone out here?" a rough voice asked. "Nope, just desert and dust," another replied. The voices belonged to 2 Scorched Ravens, their leather jackets emblazoned with the gang's fiery emblem. They scanned the area lazily. Noticing Jay's presence, Jay watched them through a crack in the pallets, his hand resting on the small but powerful firearm concealed in his chair's armrest. He didn't want to engage, not yet. If they discovered him, it would blow months of undercover work. One of the men lit a cigarette and leaned against the pallets, oblivious to how close he was to Jay. "Man, Vulture is losing it," he muttered. "The shipment too big. If the feds find out, they won't." The other interrupted. "Not unless someone talks, and you know what happens if Someone talks. His lips pressed into a thin line. He needed that intel. He waited until they moved farther down the lot, then slipped out of his hiding spot and continued toward the service door. He had just reached it when he heard the unmistakable roar of motorcycles. 5 more Ravens arrived, their bikes kicking up clouds of dust as they skid to a halt near the main entrance. Leading them was Marcus Roser, Kenny Ezekiel's right-hand man. Razor's reputation was almost as fearsome as Ezekiel's, a man with a cruel streak and no tolerance for weakness. His heart Rate remained steady as he watched Razor dismount and bark orders at the others, but when Razor's gaze swept the lot and landed near Jay's position, he froze. "You," Razor called out, striding toward him. The other ravens followed, forming a semicircle around Jay's chair. Jay didn't flinch. His voice was calm, but firm. "Can I help you?" Razor sneered, leaning down so his face was inches from Jay's. "You're awful nosy. For what are you doing here?" Jay's hands rested on the armrests of his chair, his fingers brushing against the concealed weapon. "Just a security guard doing his job. I didn't realize curiosity was a crime." Razor chuckled, a low menacing sound. "Security guard, huh? You don't look like much of a threat." He grabbed the handles of Jay's wheelchair, tipping it slightly. "But maybe we should make sure you're not poking your nose where it doesn't belong." The gang laughed as Jay's chair tilted precariously inside. His military training screamed at him to act, but he stayed still, playing the part of the helpless man they thought he was. Razor finally let go, shoving the chair back. "Roughly stay out of our way," Razor warned, stepping back, "or next time you won't be rolling out of here." Jay gave him a curt nod, knowing better than to provoke them further. As the ravens walked away, he adjusted his chair and rolled toward the road, his calm exterior hiding the storm brewing within. The scorched ravens had made one mistake. They underestimated him, and Jamal Carter had spent his whole life turning underestimation into his greatest weapon. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting Mesa Luna in deep orange hues as Jamal J. Carter wheeled back to his small rental home on the edge of town. His calm facade hadn't faltered during his confrontation with Razor and the scorched ravens, but now alone in the quiet of his living room, he allowed himself a moment to breathe. He powered up his laptop, tapping into the network of hidden cameras he placed in and around the warehouse over the last month. The video feed showed the ravens still unloading crates of weapons, the activity intensifying now that night had fallen. The presence of Razor meant the shipment was critical. This wasn't a standard transaction. It was bigger, more dangerous. Jay's instincts told him tonight might be his best and only shot to gather definitive evidence. His secure phone buzzed, a message from Special Agent Vanessa Trenton, his FBI hand. "L. Trenton, we ready to move. Any confirmation on the shipment?" Jay typed back quickly, "Military-grade weapons confirmed, large shipment. They're using the old warehouse off Desert Ridge." A pause, then another message appeared. "Trenton, understood. We'll mobilize for a raid at 010. Stay clear." Jay frowned, his eyes narrowing at the screen. Stay clear wasn't an option. If he left the ravens unchecked, there was no telling what they could smuggle out before the FBI arrived. He needed to be there to ensure nothing slipped through the cracks, and to cover his tracks if they found his surveillance equipment before the raid. Months of work would be exposed. He grabbed his backpack, loaded with a carefully chosen set of tools, a small tactical drone, a compact camera for close range recording, and a lightweight sidearm modified for his use. His wheelchair, though appearing ordinary, was reinforced and equipped with discreet compartments holding everything he needed for the mission. By the time Jay returned to the warehouse, night had settled fully. The desert was eerie, quiet, the faint rustle of wind through sag brush the only sound. He parked his vehicle a quarter-mile away, choosing to approach on wheels to avoid drawing attention. The familiar hum of his chair's motor was muted, a stealth modification he'd added early in his undercover work. He reached the perimeter of the warehouse and slipped into the shadows near the side entrance. His hidden cameras showed the gang's activity had shifted. Razor and Ezekiel Vulturegreaves were in the center of the main floor, inspecting the contents of an open crate through his earpiece. Jay listened in on their conversation straight out to the depot. Razor was saying, "This stuff's going to put us on the map." Vulture grunted in approval, his grizzled face illuminated by the glow of a work lamp. "Buyers don't want to hear excuses, Razor. If this shipment goes sideways, it's our heads, especially mine." "It won't. We're ready," Razor said, his tone confident. "I've got everything locked down tighter than a vault." Jay's lips quirked into a faint smirk. Razor's vault wasn't nearly as secure as he thought. He activated his tactical drone, guiding it toward the upper rafters of the warehouse. Its camera provided a clear view of the crates below. One of them, now fully opened, revealed rows of rifles packed with military precision. Another, partially unsealed, showed what appeared to be rocket launchers. Jay's stomach tightened. The ravens weren't just moving small arms, they were trafficking heavy artillery. This wasn't just about Mesa Luna, it was a threat on a national scale. He zoomed the drone's camera in on a document clipped to the side of a crate. It bore a government insignia stolen from a military supply line, just as he suspected. He snapped a photo through the drone's interface and sent it directly to Trenton. J. Intel confirmed, heavy artillery in play, need to move up the raid. The response was immediate. "Trenton, we 40 minutes out, do not engage." Jay sighed. He knew better than to argue with Trenton, but the situation was growing more volatile by the second. On the drone's feed, he saw Razor motioning to a group of ravens who began wheeling the crates toward the back of the warehouse. They were preparing to move the shipment. "No," Jay muttered. "If the ravens got the weapons out before the raid, the operation would be a failure." He needed to buy time. Jay rolled along the shadows skirting the edge of the warehouse. He reached a maintenance access panel near the rear loading dock. Pulling out a screwdriver from his bag, he removed the panel's cover, revealing the control system for the overhead loading bay doors. His fingers worked quickly, bypassing the standard locks and installing a small device. When he pressed a button on his phone, the doors would lock in place, preventing any vehicles from leaving. Just as he finished, the sound of voices nearby frozen in place. "You hear that?" one of the ravens asked. Probably the wind, another replied dismissively. Jay remained motionless, his hand hovering over the concealed compartment in his chair where his side arm rested. He couldn't afford to be caught, not yet. The footsteps grew louder, then paused just a few feet from his position. Thought I heard something, the first Raven muttered. Jay's grip tightened on his chair's armrest. The Ravens lingered for a moment longer before turning back toward the main building. Jay exhaled, silently waiting until their voices faded before activating the door lock remotely. A faint beep confirmed the loading dock was secure from his hidden position. Jay guided the drone closer to Razor and Vulture. The gang leaders were now huddled with another man, someone Jay didn't recognize. The stranger wore a suit, an anomaly among the leather-clad bikers, and carried himself with a military precision that set him apart. Who's the suit? Jay whispered to himself, zooming in the drone's camera for a better view. Everything is in place, the man said, his voice calm but authoritative. But you're running out of time. The FBI is closer than you think. Jay's eyes widened. Who was this man, and how did he know about the FBI before he could PE it together? Vulture barked in order to his men, get everything loaded now. I want the shipment gone in 20 minutes. Jay's heart raced. The Ravens were accelerating their timeline, and the FBI was still miles away. He didn't have 40 minutes, he had 20, if that is. Razor's men scrambled to move the crates. Jay sent one final message to Trenton. Jay, they're moving now. I'm delaying as much as I can, but you need to get here faster. Trenton's response was immediate and unequivocal. Trenton, do not engage. Jay, hold your position, we're almost there. Jay clenched his jaw. The FBI's caution was understandable, but they weren't on the ground. They didn't see what he saw. He wasn't just holding his position, he was the only thing standing between the scorched Ravens and the escape that could jeopardize everything. The minutes ticked down as Jay watched Razor and Vulture barking orders, their voices echoing across the cavernous warehouse. The Ravens moved with urgency, their movements growing sharper as the reality of their shrinking window became clear. Crates were being stacked on the backs of pickup trucks and vans, each packed with military-grade weapons capable of wreaking havoc far beyond Mesa Luna. Jay tightened his grip on his chair's controls. He had managed to lock the rear loading docks, but the gang was resourceful. If they realized the doors were sealed, they could use brute force, or worse, the heavy-duty tools he had seen stashed near the main floor. Every second mattered. He guided his drone closer to the group, its quiet hum drowned out by the commotion below. Razor's tone shifted, frustration giving way to anger. Why isn't the damn truck outside yet? He growled at one of the men. It's stuck by the ridge, the biker stammered, said they'd need at least 20 more minutes to get it here. 20 minutes? Razor's voice rose, his face twisting into snarl. We don't have 20 minutes. Jay suppressed a grim smile. It seemed fate had bought him a little time, but it wouldn't be enough unless he intervened. Trenton and the FBI were still too far out. He had to act now, navigating the perimeter silently. Jay positioned himself near the generator shed at the edge of the property. The Ravens had rigged temporary floodlights around the loading area, illuminating the entire operation. Disabling those lights would throw the gang into disarray, but it had to be done carefully, just enough disruption to slow them down without tipping off the FBI's imminent arrival. Jay popped open the shed's access panel, his fingers working quickly to locate the power supply. The circuit breaker was old and poorly maintained, and it didn't take much effort to overloaded. A controlled short sparked inside the box, and the floodlights flickered twice before plunging the warehouse exterior into darkness. What the hell? R's voice rang out, followed by a chorus of confused murmurs. Somebody checks the power. Vulture snapped, his sharp tone cutting through the noise. Jay quickly wheeled himself away from the shed, slipping back into the shadows. He activated the thermal camera on his drone, which now provided him an advantage in the darkness. The biker stumbled through the dimly lit warehouse, their confusion palpable. This ain't no accident, Razor muttered as he glanced around. Somebody messing with us in the cows. Jay spotted an opportunity. The trucks nearest the loading docks were partially loaded, their engines idling. If he could sabotage one of them, it would further delay the Ravens' escape. He rolled silently toward the closest truck, a beaten-up flat weighed down with crates. From his bag, he pulled a small canister of industrial lubricant. Sliding under the truck, he coated the axle and brake system liberally. It wouldn't take much for the added friction to grind the truck to a halt. Satisfied, he retreated into the shadows before the bikers returned to check on the vehicles. Hey, one of the Ravens shouted, shining a flashlight toward the flatbed. Something's wrong with this one, it's leaking or something. Then fix it, genius, Razor barked, or move the crates to the other trucks. Jay knew his actions wouldn't go unnoticed for long. The bikers were sharp enough to realize someone was interfering, and Razor's patience was wearing thin. He had to up the ante if he wanted to buy more time. Back at the edge of the warehouse, Jay activated his drone's secondary payload, a small speaker system capable of broadcasting pre-recorded sounds. He had prepared for moments like this, loading the drone with ambient noise files to mimic nearby activity. He triggered the sound of heavy tires crunching gravel, as if more vehicles were approaching. What now? Vulture shouted, spinning toward the sound. Everyone gets ready, Razor ordered, drawing a pistol from his waistband. If this is a raid, we hold them off. The bikers scrambled into defensive positions, some pointing their weapons toward the perimeter, others hastily repositioning the remaining crates. For the first time, panic edged into their movements. They were on high burning precious minutes preparing for a threat that wasn't there. Jay used the distraction to position himself near the building's side entrance. He needed to be ready to disable their fallback routes if the FBI didn't arrive in time. His secure phone buzzed with a message from Trenton. ETA 15 minutes, hold your position 15 minutes. Jay's heart pounded as he watched the biker regroup. Razor had regained control, directing his men with brutal efficiency. The trucks were being reloaded faster now, and despite Jay's efforts they might still escape before the raid. This ain't adding up, Vulture muttered as he scanned the shadows. Somebody's messing with us. Razor. Jay caught a flash of movement on his drone feed. Vulture, pointing toward the generator shed they were catching on. Check it out. Razor ordered, if someone's out there I want him found. Jay's time was running out. He wheeled toward the main warehouse entrance, carefully avoiding detection. The Ravens were more alert now, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. He couldn't afford another distraction. He needed the FBI to arrive now. A loud rumble from the ridge broke the tense silence. Headlights pierced the darkness as several vehicles appeared on the horizon, but they weren't FBI trucks. It was another convoy, and they weren't friendly. Jay's blood ran cold as Razor's face broke into a wicked grin. Looks like our buyers are early, Razor said, holstering his pistol. Let's get this show on the road, boys. Jay's mission had just gone from delaying a shipment to preventing a deadly arms deal, and he was right in the middle of it. Jay's stomach sank as the convoy of vehicles descended from the ridge, their headlights sweeping across the warehouse yard. The rumble of engines filled the air, drowning out the murmurs of the Ravens and the occasional creak of their trucks. Jay maneuvered his chair back into the shadows, heart pounding. The FBI was still minutes away, and now a crew of armed buyers had arrived. This wasn't just a simple weapon pickup anymore. It was shaping into a standoff that could easily spiral out of control. Through his drone's thermal feed, Jay counted 5 SUVs, each vehicle stopped with military precision doors swinging open to reveal heavily armed men in tactical gear. The leader, a broad-shouldered figure in a dark coat, stepped out and surveyed the scene with cold efficiency. His face was obscured by shadows, but his voice carried clearly. The man called, his tone calm but commanding. You're late. Jay watched as Razor approached, arms outstretched in faux camaraderie. Yeah, well, we had some hiccups, Razor said, his grin forced, but the goods are ready. Leeton, get down to business. The leader gaze swept over the dimly lit yard, lingering briefly on the generator shed and the loading docks. Your security seems lack. Is there a problem? Razor's grin faltered for a moment. Nothing we can't handle, he said, quickly glancing around as if expecting his men to chime in with reassurances. Instead there was only silence. Jay tightened his grip on the drones controls. The buyers were cautious and their weariness could buy him more time, but if they discovered the disruptions weren't accidents it might escalate into violence, and Jay would be caught in the crossfire. The buyers began to move, their men spreading out to inspect the crates. The leader gestured toward one of Razor's men. Open it. Vulture hesitated, looking to Razor for approval. Razor nodded reluctantly. Go ahead. Jay watched as Vulture pried open the top of a crate, revealing rows of rifles stacked like bricks. The buyers murmured among themselves, their leader stepping closer to inspect the contents. He picked up a rifle, testing its weight and sighting along its barrel. Impressive, the leader said, his voice cold. But we didn't come here for small arms. Where's the heavy hardware? Jay's stomach sank. If the buyers knew about the heavier weapons, the stakes were even higher than he thought. The Ravens weren't just dealing standard rifles and handguns, they were trafficking military-grade ordnance capable of devastating entire communities. Through the drone's camera, Jay saw Razor nod toward a locked container at the far end of the warehouse. Right here, Razor said, motioning for Crusher to grab the keys. Jay's mind raced. He needed to stop this, but his options were limited. The FBI was still en route, and the buyers were already on edge. Any sudden move could blow his cover, or worse, lead to open conflict. Before backup arrived, he toggled the drone speaker and played a subtle sound, the crunch of tires on gravel, mimicking another approaching vehicle. It was enough to catch the buyers' attention. They stiffened, some reaching for their weapons. What's that? One of them asked, his eyes darting toward the darkness. Probably nothing, Razor said, his voice a little too high. This place is secure. Secure. The leader turned to face Razor fully, his expression hardening. You sure about that? The buyers didn't trust the situation, and that was Jay's opening. He needed to capitalize on their suspicion without giving himself away. He activated the drone's secondary camera feed, broadcasting footage of Razor and his men scrambling. Under the dim lights, the image flickered onto a monitor inside the warehouse where a few Ravens had gathered near a table. They froze, staring at the screen. Where's the feed coming from? One of them demanded, panic creeping into his voice. Jay grinned grimly. He had planted that camera earlier, knowing the Raven paranoia would work against them. Now they were distracted, and work frustration was mounting. Turn that off, Razor shouted, his voice echoing through the yard. Focus on the deal. But it was too late. The buyer's leader had noticed the commotion. He strode toward the warehouse, his men fanning out behind him. If there's a problem here, Razor, you'd better fix it now. Jay wheeled back toward the warehouse's side entrance, his mind racing. He needed to delay the deal just a little longer, long enough for Trenton and the FBI to arrive. He spotted a stack of crates near the entrance, their contents clearly marked explosive hazard. He reached into his bag, pulling out a small device, a remote-triggered smoke canister. Carefully he rolled it under the crate's setting. The timer for 60 Seconds as he retreated to a safer distance, the first wisps of smoke began to rise. They were faint at first, barely noticeable against the dim lighting, but soon a thick, accurate cloud filled the air. Fire! One of the ravens yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. Get the hoses! The buyers, already tense, took several steps as back, their weapons raised. What the hell is this? Razor, the leader demanded, his calm veneer cracking. It's nothing, Razor insisted, but the panic in his voice betrayed him. Just a little mishap, we'll handle it. The situation was spiraling, and Jay knew he had to move fast. Through his drone feed, he saw the FBI convoy approaching from east. Their headlights cutting through the night. Relief flooded him, but it was short-lived. The buyers spotted the approaching vehicles almost immediately. Cops, one of them shouted, raising his rifle. No one shoots, the leader barked, his voice sharp. We're getting out of here. The buyers began retreating to their SUVs, their movements quick and practiced, but Razor wasn't about to lose. The deal stopped them. Razor shouted to his men, pulling his own weapon, nobody leaves until we're done here. The ravens hesitated, torn between their leader's orders and the chaos unfolding around them. The yard was now a battlefield of smoke, shouting, and flickering lights, and Jay was right in the middle of it as the FBI vehicle screeched into the yard. Agents poured out, weapons drawn. Trenton's voice boomed through a megaphone, FBI, drop your weapons and surrender. The ravens and buyers froze, the standoff teetering on the edge of violence. Jay stayed hidden, his heart racing. He had done his part, now it was up to the FBI to finish the job. The yard erupted in a cacophony of shouts and gunfire, and Jay braced himself for the chaos to come. The chaos in the yard erupted into a full-blown firefight. Muzzle flashes lit up the smoke-filled darkness, and the sharp cracks of gunfire echoed across the compound. Jay stayed low, his wheelchair hidden behind a stack of crates, heart pounding as the firefight unfolded around him. The raven fire wildly, their panic evident in their lack of coordination. The buyers, equally cornered, returned fire with precision, but their priority was clear. They were trying to retreat to their SUVs. The FBI agents moved with practiced discipline, flanking from both sides and pinning their targets down with suppressive fire. Jay's drone buzzed above its thermal camera, cutting through the haze on his tablet screen. He saw Razor shouting orders, desperately trying to rally his men. Hold your ground, Razor bellowed, his voice hoarse. Don't let them corner us. But the Raven's bravado was cracking under the relentless FBI advance von by one. Jay saw them retreat, abandoning their positions as they realized the deal was lost. From his vantage point, Jay spotted Trenton advancing with a squad of agents, their movements methodical. Trenton's voice boomed through the megaphone again, Razor Morales, drop your weapon and surrender. You're surrounded. Razor, still clutching his rifle, turned toward the voice, his face twisted in rage, but it was clear he understood the hopelessness of his situation. He fired a single defiant shot into the air before tossing the rifle to the ground. You'll never take me alive, Trenton, he shouted, hands raised mockingly. You think this stops anything? The ravens are bigger than me. Trenton's team moved in swiftly, forcing Razor to his knees and securing him in handcuffs. We'll see about that, Trenton said coldly. The firefight began to subside as more ravens dropped their weapons and surrendered. The buyers, realizing their escape was cut off, followed suit, their leader reluctantly stepping out of his SV with his hands raised. Jay let out a shaky breath, relief washing over him. The chaos was finally coming to an end, but his work wasn't finished yet. Through his drone feed, he noticed movement near the generator shed. One of Razor's lieutenants, Crusher, was slipping away, dragging a heavy duffel bag. Jay toggled the drone spotlight, illuminating the man as he sprinted toward the tree line. Trenton, Jay shouted into his earpiece, Crusher's trying to make a run for it. He's heading west toward the woods. Trenton's response crackled through. On it, agents, move west, don't let him escape. Crusher's escape attempt was short-lived. Trenton's team cut him off before he reached the trees surrounding him. With weapons drawn, he dropped the duffel bag, raising his hands in surrender. Jay wheeled himself out of his hiding spot, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He approached Trenton, who stood over the confiscated bag. Trenton unzipped it, revealing stacks of cash, several handguns, and a ledger. Jay's eyes widened as he realized the significance of the ledger. That's it, he said, his voice firm. That's the key to the Raven entire operation. Names, locations, transactions, it's all in there. Trenton nodded, handing the bag to one of his agents. We've got them, he said. You did good, Jay. As the FBI secured the scene, Jay surveyed the aftermath. The Ravens' operation had been dismantled, their leaders in custody, and their buyers neutralized. The yard, once a hub of criminal activity, was now a crime scene, cordoned off and swarming with federal agents. Jay felt a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. He had spent years building his life around this mission, using his skills and determination to turn his disability into his greatest strength, and now finally the Raven's reign of terror was over. Later, as the sun began to rise over the desert, Jay sat in his wheelchair near the edge of the compound, watching the FBI load evidence and suspects into vehicles. Trenton approached, a cup of coffee in hand. You were right, Trenton said, handing Jay the cup. The Ravens thought they were untouchable. They underestimated you. Jay took the coffee, his hands steady despite the adrenaline crash. That's what they always do, he said quietly. People see the chair and think it means weakness, but the truth is it's just part of who I am. Trenton nodded, a rare look of respect on his face. You made a difference tonight, Jay. This operation was built on your intel, your courage. The Ravens won't recover from this. Jay glanced at the compound one last time, the faint hint of a smile on his face. One fight at a time, Trenton, that's how we win. As the first rays of sunlight broke over The Horizon J wheeled himself toward his van. Ready to leave the battlefield behind, the fight against injustice would continue, but for now he had earned a moment of peace and now joined the movement for justice. Subscribe, share, sit your thoughts in the comments, and make these stories a part of your daily life. Together we can create change. If you find the story interesting and meaningful, please click like, subscribe and share to support the channel and receive the latest videos.